Forgot I'm happily married and pregnant for a second there. We're all single at a Jonas Brothers concert, married woman, tanned and shaved, also married with 5 kids. We can do it. Actually shaved my whole body and I'm married with 3 kids. Is it happily if it's not to Joe Jonas? Solid point. I'm married with 3 kids. I'm gonna go to his concert on Saturday with my daughter. Just gotta look my best when in the presence of Joe. Dozens more of comments just like this of other married women encouraging each other to go out and be a...
Have you ever wondered what happens when half of society decides they've had enough and walks away for good? The world is shifting under our feet, and men globally are waking up to a reality that's been hidden for decades. A reality so stark, it's reshaping everything we thought we knew about relationships, trust, and the future. Stick with me to the very end of this video because I'm going to reveal why this seismic change is permanent and what it means for the world we're heading into. You won't want to miss a single second of this. If you're fired up by what we're diving into today, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to smash that notification bell and select all so you get every single Angry Guy video the moment it drops. We're building a community here, and I want you in on it. Also, if you're serious about protecting your assets and growing your wealth in these chaotic times, check out Angry's Crypto Academy. It's your go-to resource for learning how to buy, sell, and trade crypto like a pro. The link is in the description. Go check it out right now and take control of your financial future. And hey, if you're loving these Angry Guy videos and want to show some support, you can buy me a Red Bull using the link in the description. Your support keeps the fire burning, and I appreciate every one of you. Let's get into it. We're living in a time unlike any other in history. Men on a global scale are waking up. They're seeing the world for what it is, and they're walking away. Not just from relationships, not just from dating, but from the entire system that's been built to keep them in chains. This isn't a temper tantrum or a phase. This is a collective awakening. A movement born from decades of frustration, betrayal, and outright disrespect. Men have been pushed to the edge, and instead of begging for scraps, they're choosing to leave the table entirely. The trust between men and women, once the foundation of society, is shattered. It's not coming back. And the consequences? They're already unfolding around us. Picture this, a man in his 30s, let's call him John. John grew up believing in the dream society sold him. Work hard, be a good guy, find a wife, build a family, and everything will fall into place. So John did that. He got a decent job, saved up, treated women with respect, and opened his heart. But what did he get in return? A string of relationships where he was used, manipulated, and discarded. He watched as women he cared about twisted every argument to paint him as the villain, even when he had the facts on his side. He saw his friends go through the same thing, divorce courts stripping them of their savings, false accusations ruining their reputations, and a society that cheered it all on. John started paying attention. He noticed patterns. He heard the same stories from men online, in forums, in the manosphere. And then maybe it hit him. This wasn't just his story. This was the story of millions of men. So John made a choice. He walked away. No more dating, no more chasing, no more playing a game that was rigged from the start. John's story isn't unique. It's the story of men everywhere, and it's why the world is changing. What's driving this? It's not just hurt feelings or bruised egos, it's wisdom. Men are learning not just from their own mistakes, but from the experiences of others. In the past, a man might have suffered in silence, thinking he was alone in his struggles. But now, the internet has changed everything. Men are connecting, sharing their stories, and comparing notes. They're seeing the same patterns play out over and over again. Women who refuse to take accountability for their actions. Double standards that punish men for existing. A society that demands men provide while offering nothing but criticism in return. The manosphere, for all the flack it gets, is a space where men are gaining clarity. It's not about hate, it's about truth. Men are done being gaslit. They're done being told their observations are wrong when the evidence is staring them in the face. And the more women and society try to silence these conversations, the louder they get. Let's talk about what men are seeing. They're seeing a world where relationships with women are no longer a source of joy, but a minefield of risk. Decades of feminism have told men they're not needed, that their masculinity is toxic, that they're the problem. Movements like Hash Me Too, while rooted in some valid concerns, were weaponized to paint men as predators for the crime of existing. Remember the term manspreading? It was literally invented to shame men for sitting comfortably. Women have used the legal system, divorce courts, family courts, civil courts, to extract wealth and destroy lives. Paternity fraud became a game, with men raising children who weren't theirs while women faced no consequences. Social media amplified it all, with women recording men in public to humiliate them, posting videos to ruin reputations, and creating groups to share and weaponize personal information about the men they dated. Men saw this. They learned, and they realized something profound. Being alone isn't the same as being lonely. Once they made peace with themselves, they found freedom. And this is where the black pill comes in. You've probably heard of the red pill. The idea that men and women think differently, and men need to wake up to that reality. The red pill was a starting point, but the black pill goes deeper. It's the understanding that female nature, left unchecked, can be manipulative, chaotic, and destructive. Men have seen it in action: the gaslighting, the emotional reasoning, the refusal to engage with facts. Women, the black pill argues, prioritize feelings over logic, and that makes rational dialogue impossible. A man can present undeniable evidence, but if a woman's emotions say otherwise, she'll double down, twist the narrative, and play the victim. And society, it backs her up every time. Men have watched this play out in their relationships, in courtrooms, on social media. They've seen women use tears, lies, and victimhood as tools to win at all costs. And they've had enough. The black pill isn't about despair, it's about clarity. It's men seeing the game for what it is and refusing to play. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about painting all women as villains, it's about recognizing patterns. Men are pattern recognizers by nature. They see cause and effect. They see how women's behavior, amplified by a society that enables it, has created a dynamic where trust is impossible. And without trust, there's no relationship, not romantic, not social, not even civil. Women have demanded men stop noticing these patterns, calling it misogyny or toxic masculinity. But the more they demand, men ignore reality, the more men see it. It's a vicious cycle, and it's driving men further away. Women have tried to censor the manosphere, to shut down male spaces, to use the government to control men's lives, but it's backfiring. Every attempt to silence men only proves their point. Every new law, every new hashtag, every new demand pushes more men to walk away, and they're not coming back. What does walking away look like? It's men like John, living minimalist lives, focused on their own happiness. They're not chasing women, not swiping on apps, not spending money on dates that lead nowhere. They're investing in themselves, their hobbies, their health, their peace. They're buying motorcycles, traveling, building businesses. They're finding luxury and simplicity because men don't need much to be content. Quiet evening with a good book, a workout at the gym, weekend fishing trip, that's enough. Men are rediscovering who they are without the weight of society's expectations, and they're thriving. Meanwhile, women are feeling the consequences. Social media is filled with women lamenting that men aren't approaching them anymore, aren't paying for their meals, aren't sliding into their DMs. They're struggling with inflation, with rent, with loneliness, but men, they're not rushing in to save the day. Not this time. This shift is permanent because men have crossed a point of no return. They've seen too much. They've learned too much. The trust is gone. And trust isn't something you rebuild with apologies or promises. It's built through actions. And the actions of women in society have spoken louder than words for decades. Men have realized that relationships with women come with too high a cost, emotionally, financially, legally. They've seen friends lose everything in divorce court, seen colleagues fired over baseless accusations, seen strangers vilified online for nothing. They've done the math, and the risk outweighs the reward. Sex, once a driving force, isn't worth the potential for pain, disease, or entrapment. Companionship, men are finding it in friendships and communities in themselves. The modern world has given men options, and they're taking them. Let's talk about society's role in this. For decades, men have been told they're the problem. They've been shamed for their strength, their ambition, their desires. Boys have been raised in schools that prioritize girls, punished for being too energetic, too competitive, too boyish. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Men have been demonized in media, portrayed as bumbling idiots or dangerous threats. And women, they've been empowered to see themselves as flawless, entitled to everything, while offering nothing in return. The result is a generation of men who see no reason to participate. Why would they? Society has made it clear it doesn't value them. So men are opting out. They're not marrying, they're not having kids, they're not chasing the corporate ladder to provide for a family that might never exist. They're living for themselves, and it's working. This is where the story gets interesting. As men walk away, society is starting to crack. Women are noticing. They're posting videos, writing articles, crying on TikTok about how hard life is without men's support. They're begging for men to come back, to date them, to pay their bills. But men aren't listening. They've heard it all before, the demands, the shaming, the manipulation. They've seen women celebrate their independence only to turn around and demand men's resources when times get tough. Men aren't falling for it anymore. They're keeping their money, their time, their energy. They're building lives that don't depend on women or society's approval. And it's not just a few men, it's millions across the globe from every walk of life. This is a movement and it's growing. What does this mean for the future? Society as we know it was built on the cooperation of men and women. Men provided, protected, and built. Women nurtured, supported, and stabilized. That balance is gone. Without men's participation, the system collapses. Infrastructure, economies, families, they all rely on men showing up. But men are saying, not my problem, and why should it be? They've been told they're not needed, so they're proving it. Women, meanwhile, are facing a reality they're not prepared for. They've been shielded from consequences for so long, but now those consequences are here. Inflation, loneliness, instability, it's all hitting at once. And men, they're watching from the sidelines, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. This isn't a call for division, it's a wake-up call. Men have made their choice, and it's based on years of evidence. They've seen the patterns, learned the lessons, and chosen a different path. The question is, where do we go from here? Can society rebuild without trust? Can women adapt to a world where men no longer play by the old rules? These are the questions we're facing, and the answers aren't easy. But one thing is certain, men are done playing a game they can't win. They're walking away, and they're not looking back. Let's keep this train rolling because we're just scratching the surface of what's happening out there. Men walking away isn't just a trend, it's a revolution, a seismic shift that's rewriting the rules of society. And the more you look at it, the clearer it becomes. This isn't about men giving up, it's about men waking up. They're seeing through the lies, the manipulation, the double standards, and they're choosing a path that puts their own peace and purpose first. But to really understand why this is happening and what it means, we need to dig into the roots of this movement, the stories of the men who are living it, and the reality that's staring us all in the face. This is about truth, and I'm here to lay it out, raw and unfiltered. Imagine another guy. Let's call him Mike. Mike's in his late 20s, works in tech, and by all accounts, he's got his life together. He's fit, makes good money, and used to be the kind of guy who'd spend his weekends swiping on dating apps, hitting up bars, trying to meet someone special. Mike believed in the fairy tale just like John did. He thought if he played his cards right, he'd find a partner who'd value him, who'd see his effort and meet him halfway. But over time, Mike started noticing something. Every date felt like an audition where he had to prove his worth while the woman across the table offered nothing but complaints about the last guy she dated. He'd pay for dinners, plan thoughtful outings, only to be ghosted or told he wasn't enough. Then came the stories from his buddies, guys who'd been dragged through the mud in relationships, accused of things they didn't do, or stuck paying alimony for kids they barely saw. Mike started digging online, stumbled across the manosphere, and found thousands of men sharing the same experiences. It was like a light bulb went off. Mike realized he wasn't crazy, wasn't alone, and wasn't the problem. So he made a decision. He deleted the apps, stopped chasing, and started focusing on himself. Now, Mike spends his weekends hiking, gaming, and building a side hustle. He's not angry, he's free. And Mike's story is playing out in cities, towns, and countries all over the world. What's pushing guys like Mike to this point? It's not just bad dates or heartbreak, it's a system that's been stacked against men for decades. Let's break it down. Society has spent the last 50 years telling men they're the root of every problem. Feminism, which started with some fair points about equality, morphed into a movement that demonized masculinity itself. Men were told their strength was oppressive, their ambition was selfish, their very existence was a threat. Boys grew up in schools where they were punished for being too rough, too loud, too competitive, while girls were praised for the same traits under the guise of empowerment. The media piled on, portraying men as either clueless buffoons or dangerous villains, never as heroes. And women, they were sold a narrative that they could do no wrong, that they deserved everything: money, attention, power, without ever having to earn it. The result? A generation of men who feel like they're walking on eggshells, constantly one wrong move away from being canceled, fired, or worse. Then there's the legal system, which has become a weapon in the hands of those who know how to wield it. Divorce courts are a prime example. Men like Mike have seen their fathers, uncles, or friends lose half their assets, their homes, their kids, all because a marriage didn't work out. Family courts often favor women, awarding them custody and alimony while leaving men with nothing but bills and heartbreak. Paternity fraud is another gut punch. Men raising children they later find out aren't theirs, with no recourse because the system protects the woman's feelings over the man's rights. And let's not forget false accusations. A single claim, even without evidence, can destroy a man's career, reputation, and future. Men have watched this happen, not just on the news, but in their own lives. They've seen the pattern. Society rewards women for playing the victim, while men are presumed guilty until proven innocent. It's no wonder men are saying enough is enough. Social media has poured fuel on this fire. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and X have given women a megaphone to shame men publicly. We've all seen the videos, a woman filming a guy at the gym claiming he stared at her, posting it online to ruin his life. Or groups like Are We Dating the Same Guy, where women share private details about men they've dated, not to warn others, but to humiliate and destroy. Men have been doxxed, fired, ostracized, all because a woman decided to weaponize her platform. And the kicker? Society cheers it on. Women are praised as brave for calling out men, while the men have no defense, no voice, no chance to tell their side. It's a digital witch hunt, and men are the targets. But here's the thing: men aren't just sitting there taking it. They're learning. They're seeing the game for what it is, a rigged system where they're set up to lose. And instead of begging for a seat at the table, They're building their own. And this brings us to the heart of why men are walking away: trust, or the complete lack of it. Relationships, whether romantic or social, are built on trust. You need to believe the other person has your back, that they'll be fair, that they'll own up to their mistakes. But men have learned through hard experience that trust is a one-way street. Women, enabled by a society that excuses their every action, rarely take accountability. When a man tries to have an honest conversation, he's met with deflection, gaslighting, or tears. He's told he's wrong, even when the evidence is undeniable. He's accused of being toxic for wanting clarity or fairness. And if he pushes back, he's the bad guy. Men have seen this play out in their relationships, in their workplaces, in their communities. They've realized that reasoning with someone who prioritizes emotions over facts is a losing battle. So they're opting out. Why fight a war you can't win? Let's talk about the black pill again, because it's the lens through which men are seeing the world. The black pill isn't just about recognizing differences between men and women, it's about understanding the darker truths of human nature, particularly female nature. Men have observed that women, when given power without accountability, often use it to manipulate and control. They've seen women twist narratives to paint themselves as victims, even when they're the aggressors. They've watched women use emotional outbursts to shut down logical arguments, knowing society will back them up. The black pill teaches men that women's loyalty is to their feelings, not to truth or fairness. And when you're dealing with someone who values feelings over reality, no amount of evidence or reason will change their mind. Men have learned this the hard way, and it's why they're walking away. They're not interested in playing a game where the rules are written to ensure they lose. But it's not just about women, it's about society as a whole. Men have realized that the system, from the courts to the media to the culture, is designed to keep them in line. They're expected to provide, protect, and sacrifice, all while being told they're not needed. They're expected to take risks, to work dangerous jobs, to build the world, while women are given preferential treatment in education, hiring, and social status. Men see the hypocrisy. Women demand equality when it suits them, but expect special treatment when it doesn't. And when men point this out, they're called bitter, insecure, or worse. But men aren't buying it anymore. They're trusting their own eyes, their own experiences, over the narrative society feeds them. And what they see is a world that doesn't value them, doesn't respect them, and doesn't deserve their effort. So, what does walking away actually look like in practice? It's men like Mike, John, and millions of others redefining their lives on their own terms. They're not chasing relationships because they've seen the cost. They're not marrying because the risk of divorce and financial ruin is too high. They're not having kids because they don't trust the system to protect their rights as fathers. They're focusing on what they can control: their health, their wealth, their happiness. Men are hitting the gym, learning new skills, starting businesses. They're traveling, exploring hobbies, finding joy in the simple things: a cold beer after a long day, a sunrise hike, a project they're passionate about. That's enough. Men are minimalist by nature, and they're discovering that they don't need much to feel fulfilled. They're building lives that don't depend on women's approval or society's validation. And it's working, and this shift is having ripple effects. Women are starting to notice that men aren't showing up anymore. The dating apps are emptier, the bars are quieter, the DMs aren't flooding in. Women are posting on social media, complaining that men won't approach them, won't pay for dates, won't play the game. They're struggling with bills, with rent, with the harsh realities of a world that's no longer cushioned by men's support. And they're confused because they were told they didn't need men, that they could do it all on their own. But now that men have taken them at their word, they're realizing just how much they relied on men's effort, men's resources, men's willingness to play along. The irony is thick. Women demanded independence, but when independence means facing the world alone, they're begging men to come back. But men aren't listening. They've heard the demands, the insults, the lies, and they're done. This isn't just a personal choice, it's a societal earthquake. Men have always been the backbone of civilization. They built the roads, the buildings, the systems that keep the world running. They took the risks, fought the wars, worked the dangerous jobs. But now they're stepping back. They're saying, if you don't need me, I'm not showing up. And society is feeling the strain. Infrastructure is crumbling. Economies are faltering. Birth rates are plummeting. Women are facing a future where they have to fend for themselves, and many aren't prepared. They've been shielded from reality for so long, told they're perfect, that consequences don't apply to them. But consequences are here, and they're hitting hard. Men, meanwhile, are adapting. They're keeping their money, their time, their energy. They're thriving in a world that's falling apart because they've learned to prioritize themselves. Let's tell another story because this is where it gets real. Meet David, a bosom, a 40-year-old construction worker. David spent his 20s and 30s married, working long hours to provide for his wife and two kids. He thought he was doing everything right, being the provider, the protector, the rock. But his wife cheated, filed for divorce, and took everything: the house, the kids, half his income. David was left with a one-bedroom apartment and a court order to pay alimony and child support, even though he barely got to see his kids. He watched his ex live comfortably off his money while he struggled to make ends meet. Then he found the manosphere, started listening to men like Kevin Samuels, and realized he wasn't alone. David decided to rebuild. He cut back on work, just enough to cover his bills and avoid more alimony. He started lifting weights, fishing, spending time with friends who'd been through the same thing. David's not dating, not looking for love. He's found something better: peace. His story is a reminder that walking away isn't just for young guys, it's for men of all ages who've seen the truth and chosen freedom. What's the bigger picture here? It's a society that's lost its balance. Men and women were meant to work together, to complement each other's strengths. Men brought structure, stability, and sacrifice. Women brought nurturing, empathy, and connection. But that partnership has been dismantled. Women, empowered by a culture that tells them they're flawless, have pushed men out. They've demanded everything while offering nothing, and men have responded by leaving. The result is a world where cooperation is dead, where trust is a memory, where the future is uncertain. Women are crying out for men to return, but men are too far gone. They've seen the patterns, learned the lessons, and they're not coming back. We're deep into this now. And if you're still with me, you're starting to see the bigger picture. Men walking away isn't just a personal choice, it's a cultural earthquake, a rejection of a system that's been bleeding men dry for decades. The stories of John, Mike, and David are just the tip of the iceberg. Millions of men are waking up to the same truths, seeing the same patterns, and making the same decision to live for themselves, not for a society that despises them or women who manipulate them. But to really grasp the scale of this movement, we need to zoom out and look at how we got here, what's fueling this fire, and why it's not just a phase, but a permanent shift. This is about men reclaiming their power, and I'm here to break it down with the clarity you deserve. Let's start with history because context matters. For centuries, men and women had a deal, an unspoken contract that kept society running. Men provided resources, protection, and structure. Women offered nurturing support and stability. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Families thrived, communities grew, civilizations rose. Men took on the hard, dangerous jobs, building cities, fighting wars, working mines, while women held the home front, raising kids, and keeping the social fabric intact. Both sides sacrificed, both sides contributed, and both sides respected the other's role. But somewhere along the line, that contract was torn up. Feminism, in its later waves, didn't just push for equality, it demanded supremacy. Women were told they could have it all: careers, independence, power, without needing men. Men, meanwhile, were told they were obsolete, their contributions worthless, their very nature toxic. The deal was off, and men were left holding the bag, expected to keep providing without any of the respect or reciprocity they'd earned. Fast forward to today, and the fallout is undeniable. Women have been empowered to chase their ambitions, which is fine in theory, but the execution has been a disaster. Society has bent over backwards to give women advantages: affirmative action in education and jobs, lenient treatment in courts, a culture that celebrates their every move while excusing their flaws. But instead of fostering gratitude or partnership, it's bred entitlement. Women have been sold the lie that they're perfect, that they deserve everything, and that men exist to serve them. And men, they've been vilified at every turn. From schoolyards to boardrooms, they're told they're the problem, their instincts are wrong, their voices don't matter. Boys are disciplined for being boys, men are punished for being men. And the result is a generation that's checked out. Why would they stay in a game that's rigged against them? Let's meet another man, someone who embodies this shift. His name is Chris, a 35-year-old mechanic from a small town. Chris grew up in the 90s, raised on the idea that if he worked hard and treated people right, he'd build a good life. He married young, had a daughter, and poured everything into his family. But his wife changed over the years. She started listening to influencers who told her she was settling, that she deserved more, that Chris's steady job and quiet life weren't enough. She filed for divorce, took their daughter, and hit Chris with child support payments that left him scraping by. The court didn't care that she cheated or that Chris was a devoted dad. They saw him as a paycheck. Devastated, Chris turned to online communities for answers. He found men sharing stories just like his, men who'd been blindsided by a system that rewarded betrayal. Chris decided he was done. He moved to a cheaper apartment, cut his hours to avoid paying more support, and started spending his free time restoring old cars, a passion he had neglected for years. Chris isn't bitter. He's liberated. He's not dating, not chasing, not playing the game. He's living for himself, and he's happier than he's been in years. Chris's story shows us something critical. Men aren't walking away out of weakness. They're walking away out of strength. They're refusing to be pawns in a system that uses them up and spits them out. And this system isn't just relationships, it's everything. Take the workplace. Men have watched as companies prioritize diversity quotas over merit, promoting women who haven't earned it while sidelining men who've put in the work. They've seen HR policies that treat any complaint from a woman as gospel, while men's concerns are dismissed. They've heard the buzzwords: toxic masculinity, privilege, mansplaining, weaponized to silence them. So men are opting out. They're not climbing the corporate ladder, not chasing promotions, not sacrificing their health for a system that doesn't value them. They're starting their own businesses, working just enough to get by, or going off grid entirely. They're finding freedom in simplicity, and it's a game changer. The economy is feeling this shift, and it's no small thing. Men have always been the engine of prosperity. They built the infrastructure, drove the trucks, coded the software, kept the lights on. But when men stop showing up, things start to break down. Look at the labor market: construction, trucking, manufacturing, all male dominated fields are facing shortages. Men aren't signing up for 80-hour weeks and dangerous jobs just to be taxed to death and shamed for existing. They're saying, if society doesn't need me, I'm not playing. And the ripple effects are everywhere. Supply chains are faltering, projects are stalling, and costs are skyrocketing. Women who've been told they can do anything are finding out that anything doesn't include the dirty, dangerous work men have always done. And when the power goes out or the shelves go empty, it's not women stepping up, it's men who've already walked away, watching from the sidelines. This brings us to the psychological side of things, because walking away isn't just about economics or relationships, it's about mindset. Men are rediscovering who they are. For years, they've been told their worth lies in what they can provide for others: be the breadwinner, the protector, the fixer. But when society tells you you're not needed, you start to question that narrative. Men are realizing they don't need to define themselves by women's approval or society's expectations. They're finding joy in their own company, their own passions, their own goals. Take a guy like Chris. Restoring cars isn't just a hobby, it's a declaration of independence. Every hour he spends in his garage is an hour he's not chasing validation from a world that doesn't care. Men are learning that solitude isn't loneliness, it's power. And once you've tasted that power, you don't go back. Let's talk about women's role in this because we can't ignore it. Women have been given a free pass for too long, enabled by a culture that refuses to hold them accountable. They've been told their emotions are truth, their desires are law, their flaws are irrelevant. This has created a dynamic where women feel entitled to men's time, money, and attention without offering anything in return. Look at modern dating. Women expect men to plan elaborate dates, pay for everything, and jump through hoops while offering little more than their presence. And when men don't comply, they're labeled cheap, boring, or unworthy. But men are catching on. They're seeing the entitlement, the manipulation, the double standards. They're realizing that women's demands are a one way street and they're choosing to walk the other way. The black pill has taught them that women's loyalty is to their feelings, not to fairness or partnership. And when you're dealing with someone who prioritizes feelings over reality, there's no winning. This lack of accountability extends beyond dating. In workplaces, women are often shielded from criticism, their mistakes overlooked, their contributions exaggerated. In courts, their word carries more weight, their tears more power. In society, their complaints are amplified, their voices prioritized. But this comes at a cost. When you excuse bad behavior, you get more of it. Women have been encouraged to manipulate, to deflect, to play the victim, and it's backfiring. Men are no longer buying the act. They're seeing through the tears, the gaslighting, the narratives, and the more women double down, demanding men ignore these patterns, the more men pull away. It's a feedback loop, and it's spiraling out of control. Women are losing the one thing they've always relied on, men's willingness to play along. Let's tell another story because these stories are the heartbeat of this movement. Meet Alex, a 25-year-old graphic designer. Alex grew up in the digital age, surrounded by social media and dating apps. He saw women his age posting about their standards, demanding men who were tall, rich, and perfect, while offering little in return. He watched his older brother get burned in a relationship, accused of things that weren't true, his reputation trashed online. Alex decided early on that he wasn't going to play that game. He focused on his career, his art, his friendships. He travels with his buddies, spends his nights creating designs that light him up, and has no interest in swiping right. Alex isn't angry. He's content. He's seen what's out there and he's chosen a different path. His story is a reminder that walking away isn't just for older guys who've been burned, it's for young men who've seen enough to know better. Alex's generation is key because they're growing up in a world where the manosphere is mainstream. They're not stumbling across these ideas in obscure forums. They're seeing them on X, on TikTok, in comment sections. They're hearing men like Kevin Samuels, who called it like it was, telling women their expectations were unrealistic and men their worth was in their choices. They're learning from the mistakes of their fathers, their brothers, their friends. They're seeing the divorce rates, the false accusations, the social media shaming, and they're saying, not me. This is what makes the movement unstoppable. It's not just a reaction, it's a revolution in thought. Men are passing down wisdom, not just through words, but through action. They're showing the next generation that there's another way to live, one that doesn't involve sacrificing everything for a system that hates you. This shift is reshaping culture in ways we're only starting to understand. Marriage rates are plummeting. Men aren't proposing because they've seen the cost. Birth rates are dropping because men aren't starting families in a world that punishes fathers. Dating apps are struggling because men aren't swiping. Women are noticing and they're panicking. Social media is flooded with videos of women lamenting that men won't approach them, won't pay for dates, won't play the provider role. They're facing economic realities, rising rent, inflation, stagnant wages without men's support, and it's hitting hard. They're realizing that independence isn't as glamorous as they were told, especially when it means struggling alone. But men, they're not rushing in to save the day. They've heard the demands, the insults, the lies, and they're done. This isn't about revenge, it's about self preservation. Men have realized that their energy is better spent on themselves. They're investing in their health, their skills, their passions. They're building lives that don't depend on women's approval or society's validation. They're finding joy in the simple things: a good workout, a quiet evening, a project that matters. And they're doing it without the drama, the chaos, the manipulation. Women, meanwhile, are facing a world where their leverage is gone. They've relied on men's desire, men's resources, men's willingness to play along. But when men walk away, that leverage disappears. And no amount of tears, hashtags, or government policies can bring it back. The irony is that women were told they didn't need men, and now they're proving it by facing the consequences of a world without them. Men have always been the shield between women and reality, taking on the risks, the burdens, the sacrifices. But that shield is gone. Women are now exposed to the harshness of life, economic instability, social isolation, personal accountability, and many aren't ready. They're begging for men to return, to date them, to provide for them. But men are too far gone. They've seen the truth, learned the lessons, and chosen a different path. And that path is leading them to a place of peace, purpose, and power. We're halfway through this journey, and if you're still here, you're seeing the truth unfold. Men walking away isn't just a reaction to a broken system, it's a reclamation of their dignity, their purpose, and their lives. This movement is rewriting the rules of society, and it's doing so because men have finally had enough. They've seen the patterns, learned the lessons, and chosen a path that puts them first. But to fully understand the weight of this shift, we need to explore the deeper layers, the philosophy behind it, the social consequences, and the men who are living this reality every day. This is about more than just dating or relationships, it's about a fundamental change in how men see the world and their place in it. Let's dive in and keep the fire burning. And let's start with the philosophy, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Men walking away is rooted in a simple but powerful idea: self ownership. For too long, men have been defined by their utility to others: be the provider, the protector, the problem solver. Society told them their worth lies in what they can do for women, for families, for the system. But men are waking up to a different truth. Their worth is intrinsic. They don't need to earn it through sacrifice or approval. They don't need to prove themselves to a world that doesn't care. This is the core of the black pill. Not despair, but liberation. It's the realization that the only person you owe anything to is yourself. Men are embracing this, and it's changing everything. They're asking, why should I play a game that's rigged against me? Why should I sacrifice for a society that hates me? And the answer is clear: they shouldn't. So they're choosing to live for their own happiness, their own goals, their own peace. This philosophy isn't new, but it's finding new life in the manosphere. Thinkers like Kevin Samuels, Gone Too Soon, laid it out plain. Men need to value themselves, not beg for scraps from women or society. The manosphere has become a digital campfire where men share this wisdom, not just through words, but through stories. They're learning from each other's experiences, seeing the same patterns: manipulation, entitlement, betrayal, and drawing the same conclusion. The system doesn't deserve their loyalty. This isn't about anger, it's about clarity. Men are realizing they've been sold a lie, that their role is to serve, to provide, to endure, while getting nothing but criticism in return. They're rejecting that lie and building lives that reflect their true value. It's a quiet revolution, but it's unstoppable, because once a man sees the truth, he can't unsee it. Let's meet another man, because these stories ground us in reality. His name is Ryan, a 32-year-old teacher from a mid-sized city. Ryan spent his 20s chasing the dream: degree, job, relationship, the whole package. He dated a woman for 5 years, thought she was the one, even planned to propose. But things started to shift. She became distant, started picking fights over nothing, and Ryan couldn't figure out why. Then he caught her texting another guy, confronted her, and instead of owning up, she flipped it on him, called him insecure, controlling, toxic. The breakup crushed him, but it also opened his eyes. Ryan started digging, found online communities where men were sharing similar stories, and realized he wasn't alone. He saw the pattern: women deflecting accountability, twisting narratives, using emotions to win. Ryan decided he was done. He threw himself into his work, started coaching a youth soccer team, and picked up photography as a hobby. He's not dating, not looking, not interested. Ryan's found something better himself. His story shows us that walking away isn't about giving up, it's about choosing a better path. Ryan's experience highlights another key piece of this movement: the death of trust. Trust is the glue that holds relationships together, whether romantic, social, or professional. But men like Ryan have learned that trust is a luxury they can't afford. They've seen women lie, manipulate, and gaslight, knowing society will back them up. They've watched friends lose everything in court over false claims, seen colleagues fired over baseless accusations, watched strangers vilified online for nothing. The black pill teaches men that women's loyalty is to their emotions, not to truth or fairness. When a woman's feelings are challenged, she'll rewrite reality to protect them, and society will nod along. Men have tried to reason, to argue, to present facts, but it's like shouting into the wind. So they're walking away, not out of bitterness, but out of self preservation. Why invest in a relationship when the other side can betray you without consequence? Why play a game where the rules only apply to you? This lack of trust extends to society as a whole. Men see the double standards everywhere. Women are celebrated for their flaws, while men are crucified for theirs. A woman can post about her struggles and get sympathy. A man does the same and gets called weak. A woman can demand a high earning partner. A man with standards is shallow. A woman can accuse without evidence. A man is guilty until proven innocent. Men have watched this play out in media, in workplaces, in courts. They've seen the system bend over backwards to protect women's feelings while ignoring men's rights, and they've had enough. They're not just walking away from women, they're walking away from a society that expects them to carry the load while treating them like the enemy. They're saying, if you don't value me, I'm not showing up. And the consequences are starting to hit. Let's talk about those consequences because they're real and they're growing. Society was built on the cooperation of men and women, but that cooperation is gone. Men have always been the ones to take on the tough jobs: construction, engineering, logistics, defense. They kept the world running, often at great personal cost. But when you tell men they're not needed, when you shame them for existing, they stop showing up. We're seeing it now: labor shortages in male dominated industries, delays in infrastructure projects, breakdowns in supply chains. Women, who've been told they can do anything, aren't rushing to fill these gaps. The dirty, dangerous work men have always done, it's not glamorous. And it's not what most women want. So the system is creaking, and it's only going to get worse. Men are keeping their energy, their skills, their effort for themselves, and society is paying the price. Women are feeling this shift most acutely. For decades, they've relied on men's resources, whether it's paying for dates, providing emotional support, or stabilizing the economy through labor. But men aren't playing that role anymore. Dating apps are drying up because men aren't swiping. Social scenes are quieter because men aren't approaching. Women are posting on social media, confused and frustrated, wondering where the good men went. They're struggling with rent, with bills, with the realities of a world that's no longer cushioned by men's willingness to step up. And they're starting to realize something: independence sounds great until you're actually alone. They were told they didn't need men, that they could have it all. But now they're facing a world where men have taken them at their word. The irony is brutal, and it's only getting sharper. Let's tell another story because these men are the soul of this movement. Meet Ethan, a 29-year-old electrician from a rural area. Ethan grew up working with his hands, learned a trade, and built a solid life. He dated here and there, but nothing stuck. A few years ago, he got serious with the woman he met online. Things were great at first, but then the red flags started piling up. She'd blow up over small things, twist his words, and play the victim whenever he called her out. Ethan tried to make it work, but after a year, he walked away. The breakup was messy. She trashed him on social media, spread lies to their mutual friends, even tried to get him in trouble at work. Ethan was shaken, but he didn't break. He found online communities where men were sharing similar experiences, and it clicked. This wasn't just his problem, it was a pattern. Ethan decided to focus on himself. He started saving for a house, took up hiking, and began mentoring young guys in his trade. Ethan's not lonely, he's thriving. His story is a testament to the power of walking away, not as defeat, but as victory. Ethan's experience underscores another truth: women's leverage is gone. For years, women have relied on men's desire for companionship, for intimacy, for approval, to keep men in line. But men like Ethan have realized that desire is a trap. The cost of chasing it is too high. Emotional drama, financial ruin, legal risks. Men are finding that they don't need women to be happy. They're building rich lives filled with purpose, friendship, and passion. They're discovering that the things society told them they needed, a wife, a family, a picket fence, are just chains disguised as dreams. And once you break those chains, you don't go back. Women are left with nothing to offer because men no longer see relationships as a prize. They see them as a liability, and they're opting out. This shift is reshaping the social landscape in profound ways. Marriage rates are at historic lows because men aren't proposing. Birth rates are collapsing because men aren't starting families. Dating culture is on life support because men aren't participating. Women are facing a future where they have to rely on themselves, and many aren't prepared. They've been shielded from accountability for so long, told their value is inherent, that they don't need to bring anything to the table. But now the table's empty and men aren't coming back to fill it. Women are posting on TikTok, on X, crying about how hard life is, begging for men to return, to date them, to provide. But men are deaf to the pleas. They've heard the insults, the demands, the lies, and they're done. They're building lives that don't depend on women, and it's working. The economic implications are just as stark. Men have always been the backbone of the economy, taking on the jobs that keep society running. But when men walk away, the system starts to crumble. We're seeing it in real time. Fewer men in the workforce, fewer men starting businesses, fewer men investing in the future. They're keeping their money, their time, their energy for themselves. Women, meanwhile, are facing a world where their safety net is gone. They're struggling to afford basics, rent, food, utilities, because the men who used to subsidize their lives aren't there anymore. And the government, it can't fill the gap. Welfare programs, social services, all rely on tax revenue. And when men stop working overtime, stop climbing the ladder, stop contributing, that revenue dries up. The system is buckling and women are bearing the brunt. This isn't about gloating, it's about reality. Men have made a rational choice based on years of evidence. They've seen the double standards, the manipulation, the betrayal. They've watched society cheer as women weaponize their emotions, their voices, their victimhood. They've learned that trust is a one-way street and they're not walking down it anymore. They're choosing themselves, and it's not just a personal decision, it's a cultural tidal wave. The manosphere is growing, not because men are angry, but because they're awake. They're sharing knowledge, building communities, living lives that reflect their values. And the more men join, the stronger this movement gets. Let's wrap this section with one more story because these men are the future. Meet Lucas, a 27-year-old software developer. Lucas grew up watching his dad work himself to the bone for a family that didn't appreciate him. His parents divorced when he was a teen, and Lucas saw his dad lose everything: house, savings, time with his kids. Lucas vowed not to repeat that mistake. He focused on his career, built a solid nest egg, and stayed single. He's seen what's out there: women demanding perfection while offering chaos, a culture that shames men for existing. Lucas isn't interested. He spends his free time gaming, traveling, and volunteering at a local animal shelter. He's not lonely, he's free. Lucas's story is a beacon for young men everywhere. You don't need to follow the script society hands you. You can write your own, and it can be better. We're pushing deeper into this, and if you're still riding with me, you're seeing the world through a lens most people are too afraid to pick up. Men walking away isn't just a movement, it's a reckoning. It's millions of men saying, I'm done, to a system that's been using them up and spitting them out for decades. This isn't about giving up, it's about waking up, taking control, and building a life that doesn't depend on a society that's turned its back on them or women who've lost their leverage. We've covered the stories, the philosophy, the social cracks, but now it's time to look at the long game, what this means for the future, why it's permanent, and how men are finding power in this new reality. Let's keep the momentum going and unpack the truth. Let's start with the future, because that's where this is all headed. Society as we know it was built on a delicate balance, men and women working together, each bringing something to the table. Men provided the muscle, the innovation, the risk taking. Women brought the nurturing, the emotional stability, the social glue. That balance is gone, and it's not coming back. Men have seen too much, learned too much to ever return to the old ways. They've watched women weaponize their emotions, twist narratives, and demand everything while offering nothing. They've seen society cheer this on, rewarding bad behavior while punishing men for existing. The trust that once held everything together is shattered, and without trust, there's no partnership, no cooperation, no future. Men are walking away, and the consequences are going to reshape the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. Picture a city 10 years from now. The streets are quieter, the workforce is smaller, the economy is struggling, infrastructure projects are stalled because men aren't signing up for the backbreaking jobs that keep things running. Birth rates are at historic lows, schools are half empty, and communities are fracturing. Women are struggling, inflation has made rent and groceries unaffordable, and the safety net of men's resources is gone. Social media is filled with women lamenting the shortage of good men, begging for someone to step up, to date them, to provide. But men aren't listening. They're living minimalist lives, focusing on their own happiness, their own goals. They're hiking, building businesses, enjoying their freedom. They've learned that society doesn't deserve their sacrifice, and they're proving it by thriving while the system crumbles. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. It's the logical outcome of a world where men say, not my problem. Let's meet another man, because these stories are the pulse of this movement. His name is Tyler, a 34-year-old carpenter from a coastal town. Tyler grew up in a world that told him to be a good guy, work hard, settle down, make everyone happy. He followed the script, got engaged, and started planning a life with his fiancée. But things fell apart when she started listening to friends who said she could do better. She broke off the engagement, blamed Tyler for holding her back, and moved on without a second thought. Tyler was gutted, but he didn't stay down. He found online communities where men were sharing similar stories, and it hit him. This wasn't just his failure, it was a pattern. Women, enabled by a culture that inflates their egos, were walking away from good men, chasing fantasies that didn't exist. Tyler decided he was done. He threw himself into his craft, started building custom furniture, and bought a small cabin where he spends his evenings woodworking or fishing. Tyler's not chasing love or approval. He's found peace. His story shows us that walking away is about reclaiming your life, not running from it. Tyler's story points to a key truth. Men are finding empowerment in this movement. For years, they've been told their power lies in what they can do for others. Be the provider, the fixer, the hero. But the black pill flips that script. It teaches men that their power is in their choices, their boundaries, their ability to say no. Men like Tyler are realizing they don't need to beg for respect or validation. They can create their own happiness, their own purpose, without jumping through society's hoops. This is why the movement is permanent. Once a man discovers this kind of freedom, he doesn't go back. He's tasted what it's like to live for himself, to prioritize his own goals, to walk away from a game that's rigged. And that's a truth you can't unlearn. This empowerment is psychological, but it's also practical. Men are taking control of their finances, their time, their energy. They're not spending money on expensive dates or chasing women who don't value them. They're not working themselves to death for a system that taxes them into oblivion. They're investing in themselves, learning new skills, building side hustles, saving for the future. Look at Tyler. His carpentry business isn't just a job, it's a statement. Every piece of furniture he builds is a middle finger to a world that told him he wasn't enough. Men are discovering that they don't need much to be happy. A small home, a few hobbies, good friends. They're minimalist by nature, and this simplicity is their strength. While women are struggling with the chaos of a world without men's support, men are finding clarity in the calm. Let's talk about women again, because their role in this can't be ignored. Women have been sold a lie that they can have it all without effort, that men will always be there to pick up the pieces. But men aren't there anymore. And women are starting to feel the weight of that reality. They're posting on social media, crying about how hard life is, how men won't approach them, how they can't afford to live. They're confused because they were told it's just independence was empowering, that they didn't need men. But independence isn't a hashtag, it's a grind. And many women aren't ready for it. They've relied on men's resources, men's labor, men's willingness to play along. And now that those are gone, they're scrambling. The black pill teaches men that women's power comes from men's participation. And when men walk away, that power vanishes. Women are learning this the hard way, and it's a lesson they can't ignore. This dynamic is creating a divide that's only getting wider. Men and women are no longer on the same team. Women, enabled by a culture that excuses their flaws, have pushed men away with demands, manipulation, and double standards. Men, in response, have chosen to protect their peace. They're not negotiating, not compromising, not begging for a seat at the table. They're building their own tables, their own lives, their own futures. And women, they're left with a choice: adapt or struggle. Some are starting to see the truth, posting online about wanting to go back to traditional roles, to relationships built on mutual respect. But it's too late. Men have seen the patterns: gaslighting, entitlement, betrayal, and they're not buying the promises. The trust is gone, and without trust, there's no going back. Let's tell another story, because these men are the backbone of this shift. Meet Nathan, a 30-year-old paramedic from a big city. Nathan spent his 20s saving lives, working long shifts, and dating women he met through friends or apps. He thought he was doing everything right: good job, good heart, good intentions, but every relationship ended the same way: drama, accusations, chaos. His last girlfriend spread lies about him after they broke up, nearly costing him his job. Nathan was done. He started reading online, found men sharing stories just like his, and realized the problem wasn't him. It was a system that rewarded women's bad behavior. Nathan decided to focus on himself. He picked up martial arts, started saving for a motorcycle, and began mentoring younger paramedics. He's not dating, not looking, not interested in the chaos. Nathan's found something better: purpose. His story is a reminder that walking away isn't about isolation, it's about connection to yourself and to what matters. Nathan's story highlights another piece of this puzzle: the manosphere's role in this movement. The manosphere isn't just a collection of angry guys venting online. It's a knowledge hub, a place where men trade wisdom and build resilience. It's where Nathan learned he wasn't alone, where Tyler found the courage to start over, where Ryan discovered his worth. The manosphere is growing because it offers something society doesn't: truth. It's not about tearing women down. It's about lifting men up, helping them see the patterns, avoid the traps, and live better lives. Critics call it toxic, but that's just noise. The manosphere is a lifeline for men who've been gaslit, shamed, and betrayed. It's a space where they can be honest, share their pain, and find solutions. And the more society tries to censor it, the stronger it gets. Because truth doesn't die, it spreads. This growth is why the movement is unstoppable. Men are passing down knowledge, not just to their peers, but to the next generation. Young men, like Lucas from our earlier story, are growing up with access to this wisdom. They're seeing the divorce rates, the court biases, the social media shaming, and they're opting out before they even start. They're not waiting to get burned. They're learning from the scars of others. This is what makes the shift permanent. It's not just a reaction to bad experiences, it's a proactive choice to live differently. Men are teaching each other to prioritize themselves, to build lives that don't depend on women or society. And as more men join, the movement gains momentum like a snowball rolling downhill. Let's zoom out and look at the cultural impact because this is bigger than individuals. The decline of marriage and birth rates isn't just a statistic, it's a signal. Society needs families to function, to raise the next generation, to keep the economy humming, but men aren't starting families because they don't trust the system to protect them. They've seen fathers lose their kids, their savings, their dignity in court. They've watched women walk away with everything, backed by a system that sees men as ATMs. So men are saying no. They're not marrying, not having kids, not playing a role that punishes them. This is creating a demographic crisis. Fewer workers, fewer taxpayers, fewer people to keep the system afloat. Women are feeling the pinch, struggling to build lives without the support they once took for granted. But men, they're adapting, thriving in a world that's falling apart. The economic fallout is just as real. Men have always been the engine of prosperity, taking on the jobs that keep society running: construction, tech, logistics, energy. But when men walk away, that engine sputters. We're seeing it now: labor shortages, supply chain breakdowns, infrastructure delays. Men aren't working themselves to death for a system that taxes them into oblivion and shames them for existing. They're keeping their money, their time, their energy. They're starting small businesses, working just enough to get by, or going off grid entirely. Women, meanwhile, are facing a world where their safety net is gone. They're struggling to afford basics: rent, food, utilities, because the men who used to subsidize their lives aren't there anymore. The government can't fill the gap. It's stretched thin, reliant on the same men who've checked out. The system is cracking, and the cracks are only getting wider. Let's tell one more story because these men are the future. Meet Marcus, a 28-year-old fitness trainer from a suburban town. Marcus grew up watching his mom raise him alone after his dad was destroyed in a divorce. He saw the toll it took: his dad's broken spirit, his mom's struggle, the system's indifference. Marcus vowed to carve his own path. He built a career helping people get strong, not just physically, but mentally. He's seen what's out there: women demanding perfection, a culture that shames men, a system that punishes them. Marcus isn't playing that game. He spends his days training clients, his evenings lifting weights or reading, his weekends hiking with friends. He's not lonely, he's alive. Marcus's story is a beacon. You don't need to follow society's script to find meaning. You can build your own, and it can be powerful. Marcus's life shows us what's possible when men walk away. It's not about isolation or bitterness, it's about purpose, freedom, and strength. Men are rediscovering who they are, what they want, what they're capable of. They're building lives that don't depend on women's approval or society's validation. They're finding joy in the simple things: a good workout, a clear mind, a life without chaos. And as more men follow this path, the world is changing. Women are facing a reality they can't ignore: a system that's crumbling, a future that's uncertain. Men, meanwhile, are writing a new story, one where they're the heroes, not the villains. And that story is just beginning. We've been on this journey for a while now, and if you're still here, you've seen the truth laid bare. Men walking away isn't just a moment, it's a movement that's rewriting the future. It's millions of men choosing themselves over a system that's been draining them dry, a society that's turned its back on them, and relationships that offer more risk than reward. We've told the stories, unpacked the philosophy, and traced the cracks in the world around us. But now it's time to bring this home, to look at why this shift is here to stay, how men are thriving in it, and what it means for everyone else. This is the final stretch, so let's finish strong and leave no stone unturned. Let's start with why this movement is permanent, because that's the heart of it. Men aren't walking away because they're tired or frustrated. They're walking away because they've seen the truth. And once you see it, there's no going back. The black pill isn't just a lens, it's a revelation. It shows men that the system, society, relationships, culture is built to use them up and discard them. They've seen women manipulate, deflect, and play the victim, backed by a world that rewards bad behavior. They've watched friends lose everything in court, seen strangers vilified online, felt the weight of double standards in their own lives. This isn't a phase, it's a paradigm shift. Men have learned that trust is a trap, that sacrifice is a one way street, that their worth isn't tied to what they can do for others. And once you learn that, you don't unlearn it. You don't go back to a game that's rigged against you. This permanence is rooted in knowledge. The manosphere, for all the criticism it gets, is a library of lived experience. It's where men like Tyler, Nathan, Marcus, and millions of others have compared notes, shared their pain, and found clarity. It's not about anger, it's about wisdom. Men are learning from each other, passing down lessons that their fathers never had the chance to teach. They're seeing the patterns, gaslighting, entitlement, betrayal, and choosing to avoid the traps. And this knowledge isn't static, it's growing every day. More men find these communities, more stories are shared, more truths are uncovered. The manosphere is a living, breathing movement, and it's only getting stronger. Society can try to censor it, women can try to shame it, but truth doesn't bend. It spreads, and men are listening. Let's meet one final man because his story ties this all together. His name is James, a 31-year-old chef from a bustling city. James grew up in a world that told him to chase the dream, work hard, find love, build a life. He did that, pouring his heart into his career and his relationships. But every relationship ended the same way: drama, accusations, chaos. His last girlfriend cheated, then spun a story that painted James as the villain, spreading it to their social circle. James was crushed, but he didn't break. He found online forums where men were sharing similar experiences, and it clicked. This wasn't just his story, it was a pattern. James decided to walk away. He focused on his craft, opened a small catering business, and started spending his free time surfing and volunteering at a local food bank. James isn't lonely, he's alive. His story is the capstone of this movement. Men aren't running from life, they're running toward it, building something better on their own terms. James's story shows us the power of this movement. Men like him aren't just surviving, they're thriving. They're finding joy in their passions, their friendships, their freedom. They're not chasing women because they've seen the cost. They're not sacrificing for a society that doesn't value them because they've learned their worth. They're living minimalist lives, not out of necessity, but by choice. A small apartment, a few hobbies, a tight circle of friends, that's enough. Men are discovering that happiness doesn't come from external validation, it comes from within. And this is why the movement is unstoppable. Once a man finds this kind of peace, he doesn't trade it for chaos. He doesn't go back to a world that demands everything and gives nothing. He keeps moving forward, and he's not alone. This empowerment is changing men in profound ways. For years, they've been told their role is to serve, be the provider, the protector, the one who takes the hit. But the black pill teaches them something different. Their role is to live. Men are rediscovering their agency, their ability to choose their own path. They're saying no to relationships that drain them, no to jobs that grind them down, no to a culture that shames them. They're saying yes to themselves, their health, their goals, their happiness. Look at James. His catering business isn't just a job, it's a declaration of independence. Every meal he creates is a reminder that he's enough, that he doesn't need anyone's approval to be whole. Men are finding this truth across the globe, and it's lighting a fire that can't be put out. Let's talk about the other side of this because we can't ignore it. Women are facing a world they're not prepared for. They've been told for decades that they don't need men, that they can do it all, that their value is inherent. But now that men are walking away, that narrative is collapsing. Women are struggling economically, socially, emotionally. They're posting on social media, lamenting that men won't approach them, won't pay for dates, won't play the provider role. They're grappling with rising costs, stagnant wages, and a loneliness that's new and raw. They were sold a dream of independence, but independence isn't a filter or a hashtag. It's a grind, and many aren't ready. They've relied on men's resources, men's labor, men's willingness to step up, and now that those are gone, they're lost. The black pill shows men that women's power comes from men's participation, and when men opt out, that power evaporates. This divide is creating a new reality. Men and women are no longer partners, they're strangers moving in opposite directions. Women, enabled by a culture that excuses their flaws, have pushed men away with demands, manipulation, and double standards. Men, in response, have chosen to protect their peace. They're not negotiating, not compromising, not begging for a place in a system that doesn't want them. They're building their own lives, their own communities, their own futures. Some women are starting to see the truth, posting about wanting to return to traditional roles, to relationships built on mutual respect. But the damage is done. Men have seen the patterns: gaslighting, entitlement, betrayal, and they're not buying the promises. The trust is gone, and trust isn't rebuilt with words, it's rebuilt with actions. And those actions have been absent for too long. This isn't just a social shift, it's an economic and cultural one. Men have always been the backbone of society, taking on the jobs that keep the world running: construction, tech, logistics, defense. But when men walk away, the system starts to break. We're seeing it now: labor shortages, supply chain issues, infrastructure delays. Men aren't working themselves to death for a culture that taxes them into oblivion and shames them for existing. They're keeping their money, their time, their energy. They're starting small businesses, working just enough to get by, or going off grid entirely. Women are feeling the fallout, struggling to afford basics: rent, food, utilities, because the men who used to subsidize their lives aren't there anymore. The government can't fill the gap. It's stretched thin, reliant on the same men who've checked out. The system is crumbling, and the consequences are hitting hard. Let's zoom out and look at the cultural legacy of this movement because it's bigger than any one person. The decline of marriage and birth rates is a signal that society is fracturing. Families are the building blocks of civilization, but men aren't starting families because they don't trust the system to protect them. They've seen fathers lose their kids, their savings, their dignity in court. They've watched women walk away with everything, backed by a system that sees men as disposable. So men are saying no. They're not marrying, not having kids, not playing a role that punishes them. This is creating a demographic crisis: fewer workers, fewer taxpayers, fewer people to keep the system afloat. Women are struggling to build lives without the support they once took for granted, and the future is uncertain. But men, they're adapting, thriving in a world that's falling apart because they've learned to prioritize themselves. This movement is also rewriting masculinity. For years, men have been told their strength is toxic, their ambition is selfish, their desires are wrong. But men are rejecting that narrative. They're embracing their nature, their drive, their resilience, their ability to create. They're building lives that reflect their values, not society's demands. They're finding pride in their work, their hobbies, their friendships. They're redefining what it means to be a man, not as a servant to others, but as a master of his own destiny. This is the legacy of the manosphere, not division, but empowerment. It's men teaching each other to stand tall, to protect their peace, to live without apology. And as more men join, this legacy grows, shaping a new generation that won't repeat the mistakes of the past. Let's tell one last story because these men are the future. Meet Caleb, a 26-year-old mechanic from a small town. Caleb grew up watching his older brother get burned in a marriage that ended in divorce and financial ruin. He saw the toll it took, his brother's broken spirit, the system's indifference. Caleb decided early on to forge his own path. He learned a trade, saved his money, and stayed single. He's seen what's out there: women demanding perfection, a culture that shames men, a system that punishes them. Caleb isn't interested. He spends his days fixing cars, his evenings playing guitar, his weekends camping with friends. He's not lonely, he's free. Caleb's story is a beacon for young men everywhere. You don't need to follow society's script to find meaning. You can write your own, and it can be powerful. Caleb's life is a testament to what's possible when men walk away. It's not about isolation or bitterness, it's about purpose, freedom, and strength. Men are rediscovering who they are, what they want, what they're capable of. They're building lives that don't depend on women's approval or society's validation. They're finding joy in the simple things: a good day's work, a clear mind, a life without drama. And as more men follow this path, the world is changing. Women are facing a reality they can't ignore, a system that's crumbling, a future that's uncertain. Men, meanwhile, are writing a new story, one where they're the heroes, not the villains. And that story is the future. So, what does this all mean? It means we're at a crossroads. Society can't keep going like this, fractured, divided, with half its population opting out. Men have made their choice, and it's based on years of evidence. They've seen the double standards, the manipulation, the betrayal. They've learned that trust is a one-way street, and they're not walking down it anymore. Women, society, the system, they all have a choice to make. Will they acknowledge the truth, take accountability, and rebuild trust? Or will they double down, demanding men return to a game they've already left? The answer will shape the future, but one thing is clear: men aren't waiting around for it. They're moving forward, building lives that reflect their worth, and they're not looking back. This brings us to the end, but it's not the end of the conversation. What did you think about what we discussed today? Do you agree that men are walking away for good, that the trust is gone, that the system is broken? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. But I want to hear from you. This is a community, and your voice matters. Like the video. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe. And if you found value in this, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And just remember, all roads lead to MWA, men walking away. Cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.